here's Brody Brazil.
In this video, I'm going to address the same question that keeps coming up this same time of year, every season for 49ers fans, and that is there any way to get shade on the east side of Levi Stadium, whether it's a roof or a covering? Can there be a fix to what a lot of fans are saying is a problem, is a flaw with Levi Stadium? And quite honestly, you can see it here a little bit in this photo, how the eastern seats are getting blasted by the sun, which is coming in from this direction. At this point, there's only a little bit of shade from this structure right here of all the luxury suites and boxes in the press box. But eventually, as we'll show you here in this video, what happens through the course of a day is the shade covers most of this, but then the sun just keeps hitting those stands on the east side of the stadium. And as fans will tell you, it gets a little bit uncomfortable in the early season games. So this is from August of 2018. I mean, Matt Mayoko has been covering this for a long time, like the team for a long time, but this issue for a long time. At this point, the stadium was, 4 or 5 years old? This was from the 49ers Talk podcast and an article that Mayoko wrote for NBC Sports. After soliciting the opinions of numerous architects and civil engineers, the 49ers found that there is no reasonable way to provide shade for those who sit in the sunny seats on the east side of Levi Stadium. The 49ers have investigated all solutions. Wait, hang on. I don't know why purple popped up. All solutions to provide relief from the heat at Levi Stadium, but the design of the stadium, along with FAA regulations, makes all possible renovations or construction impractical. Now, impractical is an interesting word there. Doesn't mean impossible. It means impractical. It's not worth it. It would ruin something. It might actually diminish another part of the experience. Impractical, you know the definition of it, but not impossible. 49ers team president, Guido, as part of that podcast who Matt was interviewing, said this exact quote: "We can't add shade. It's not possible." So for the purpose of this video, right, you could almost render everything I'm about to say here down the road irrelevant, because the people in charge, and that's their perspective, and that's the work and the research they've done, saying it's not possible. Okay, so I just want you to understand that's where things stand before I go too deep into anything else here. What I can tell the fans is we're committed to making their experience as best as it possibly can. We understand there might be a game or two early in the season that might be warm. We cannot add shade. We cannot build a roof. And again, just to recap, this photo, actually, it's not even a photo. It's just the satellite image here from, I think, Apple Maps, but it goes to give you a lot better detail. Look, this side is in the shade. That's the west side. It's because of this skybox structure. And this east side is getting hit pretty hard by the sun. Now, look, in Santa Clara, there's a lot of days where clouds aren't present. That sun can beat on you from this direction in the months of August and September, and quite honestly, even into October. The climate is a little bit warm down there in the South Bay. And I think as we all understand and maybe even remember, at one point, this whole stadium design was actually planned and meant for a new facility at Candlestick Point. Like the entire rendering and this open space on the end zone and this open space to kind of look out at either the bay or the skyline, that was all meant to be done for Candlestick Point, at least as I understand it. As I looked at the renderings from back in the day, this design looks a lot like what they were planning initially for San Francisco. So it's almost like they said, hey, well, we've already got this designed and we like it, so let's just put this in Santa Clara. By the way, I'm somebody who covered the construction of this stadium. I remember doing like a report right here in what used to be the parking lot of Great America back in the day, right outside the team headquarters. That's an old building. This is an old facility that's been there forever. That was their team headquarters for a long time. And so that existed, and that's where we showed up, and then there used to be this big parking lot right across the street. Anyway, so you understand that all of this is coming together, and maybe the hindsight might be a little bit more clear that some precautions should have been taken. But let's go back to that FAA part for just a second, because, you know, I might know somebody who's kind of centered around aviation. I might know somebody who's a commercial pilot and certified flight instructor. That's me, of course. All right, so this is San Jose Airport, right? So there's SJC, and here's Levi's Stadium, right? So I want to point those things out. What I'll do is I'll just draw the arrow on the map. I'll take that away. And if you're wondering, like, how far away we are from the very end of the runway. So the runways going this direction are 30. You've got 30 right, you've got 30 left. There used to be a third runway in there, but they don't use it anymore. But what we're talking about here is how far away the airport is from Levi Stadium, and that distance is 2.45 miles. And I just want you to put this in your brain for just a second so I can explain it here as we go along. It's also important to know that the height, which I'm pretty sure this is correct, the height of Levi Stadium is about 176 feet at its peak. Maybe that's the top of the lights, but that's the top of the structure, 176 feet. And that kind of makes sense. Okay, so now that you understand this, it's also important to know that airplanes land at San Jose in two different directions. Typically, during normal weather situations and normal operations, they're landing this way, right? So they're landing this way, and then they're taking off this way. So this is not a problem, right? When they're taking off, I mean, they're gaining altitude so fast, and usually they're doing that big right-hand turnout on the departure. Don't mean to get technical here. But usually taking off over Levi Stadium is not a problem, and that's normal operation. The problem is when the weather gets bad usually, and the winds are coming out of the south, then we are landing from the north, and airplanes are getting just a little bit lower over Levi Stadium. So herein lies the question. If we're using the opposite runway, we're using runway 12. Wait a second, what am I showing you right here? I'm showing you an approach plate for the ILS or localizer runway 12 right approach. Yes, we're geeking out over here. But what I'll zoom in here and show you is that when airplanes land from this direction, how high are they? And it's like, really, if it's 176 feet and you made a roof like another 25, 30, 40 feet higher, is that really going to be a problem? Essentially, what did we say? That Levi Stadium was about 2.5 miles away from the runway. So now we can come back over here. Let me do blue. And now we can say there's the end of the runway. So this is kind of the profile view. Levi Stadium is somewhere, I don't know, right out there. You have to be greater than 520 feet. I'm reading this chart for you here. You can't descend below 520 feet until you're inside 1.4 miles. So you at least have to be that high. And quite honestly, at 2.5 miles, I'll estimate this on the glide slope, that's what this is here, that you're probably going to be about 750 feet above the ground. So if the stadium is 200 feet max, even with a roof, you still have about 550 feet of clearance. Now, is that a lot? Do you ever want to push it to that close? Not necessarily, but here's the thing. If you look at this approach plate, there's other obstructions out there which are about at the same distance. There's one that's, I'll write it bigger here so you can see. There's one right there that's 223 feet. There's another one right below it that's 251 feet. So like you've got other things out there that are even higher, and they are like right on the final approach path. They're on that localizer course for runway 12 right at San Jose. So, okay, so what I want to make clear here is I'm not necessarily countering all. We'll see this in a second. Hang on. I don't work for the FAA. I'm just a pilot and a flight instructor, but I can understand that like the FAA might have some concerns here, and maybe they already needed approval to get it as high as they could. But I'm not sure whether that's the ultimate barrier or if it's just an inconvenience. I'm just saying, I don't know for sure. I'm just throwing it out there. I just want people to understand this. So here we go now with, could you put a roof on Levi Stadium or some type of covering? But I think the critical part is if we've already established that's about 170 feet, how much extra height is all of that going to take up? Because if that height requires another like 50 feet, 70 feet, that's a lot. Like if it's a big arching roof, that might be more of a problem. But if you can make it like a super low profile shade type situation, and by the way, I should be clear, I don't know who came up with this rendering. I literally found this on, I think, Reddit. I think that's where the Google search led me to Reddit. So I can't give credit. I wish I could. I don't know who came up with this, but it's interesting, right? Whoever has designed this has certainly made it interesting. I do not exactly know where this came from, but could you do it like this? Now, the other problem, like there's more to it than just the height part. There's the logistical part. Could you actually do this so that you put these support structures in and all of this actually works? Like this kind of impedes with the rest of your stadium design. Is this ugly? Does this work? Do you really want a big fabric piece over the stadium just for a couple games in September every year? Like I know fans will say that when it happens, but do they actually want to make like this permanent change to something that is an inconvenience a couple times a year? Now, in Florida, they did this at I'll call it Joe Robbie Stadium since I'm old school. The Marlins used to play there. The Dolphins have been playing there forever. It's always been this outside stadium structure until recently when they said, hey, we want to host a Super Bowl. We're going to put a roof, not over the field, but we're going to cover all the seats. We're going to cover the seats from the sun. So they built this, and from what I understand, the cost is not clear, but I think it was anywhere from $300 to $550 million. They did some other stuff. They built, I think, that building right there. But I don't know how much the roof exactly cost, but we'll put it this way. We got to be talking at least $250 million for that structure, to design it, to engineer it, and to actually put it up and maintain it. But it just goes to show you something like this is actually possible. So here are my takeaways, and let's begin with that. Number one, anything is possible to design and build. We're living in 2024. So for somebody to say, well, we can't do it, it's impossible. No, it is possible. It's just not practical. It's impractical. I think that was the word. And look, that might be the case. We could just end our conversation right there. But anything is possible. Let's declare that. I would also say that for the 49ers and for those who run Levi Stadium, it is a problem, but it's not truly a problem. You know what? What color works good here? Is teal a good one? Yeah, there we go. It's not truly a problem until it's an actual problem. Because really, before it's an actual problem, it's just an inconvenience. And people will deal with it for a couple games a year, and it's not perfect. I will say this. For people who sit on those seats on the eastern side and they want to get out of the sun for a little bit, they do miss part of the game watching it, but you know where they go? The concourse area or the club area. And you know what they do there? Buy more things, get more drinks, eat more food. You know, like it's not really an inconvenience. It's not really a problem until it's an actual problem and they've got to be forced to change. Until then, it's just an inconvenience. So think about that. And then lastly, if you do this, like I saw that design and I saw how kind of, I don't know, it makes the design look worse. It makes it's an afterthought, right? It's a modification that just didn't fit in with the original. Maybe somebody else could come up with a better design, but the questions are like, do you do a fabric roof? Do you do a full roof? Is Levi Stadium a dome now? Do you do it carport style, kind of like T-Mobile Park up in Seattle? Now that's a retractable roof, but it can open, it can shut, it kind of sits above the stadium. But again, we can't do too much height here. And would any of this ruin the whole thing? Again, I think it's important to realize here, yes, is it going to be hot for a couple games? We've realized that. Some years are just going to be better than others. Some years are going to be worse than others weather-wise. And that sun sitting right on your face. But are you thinking that you're willing to like modify this whole, blue on blue, Brazil? Come on. Do you want to modify all that just to protect this side that's a lot of seats. And that's where your blue collar fans are sitting, right up here. No question about it. How do you do that at a right cost to make it worth it so you don't ruin the rest of this beautiful outdoor stadium? It's just a lot to weigh in on here. But I think the point is, anything is possible, not everything is practical. You've made it here to the end of this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. That obviously helps me and this video and this channel. I would like that, but I would also love it, especially these days, if you just take 1 second, go down there, hit that subscribe button. That way I definitely get to see you back here next time.